For this project, I was assigned a group looking at Short Strand as the area of study. We were tasked to note down anything we found intriguing or unusual. We decided to meet at Custom House Square, getting the glider from here to the Short Strand glider stop, feeling that this would be the best place to begin our journey. This shows the transport that we took. Throughout this project, we were tasked to think in the mindset of George Perec, having read his Species of Spaces, and how he observed the world in a more unique way than others. When in Short Strand, we eventually split up into two groups so that we could cover more area, considering we had a 2.5 hour range time constraint. We felt this was best to cover the most ground. This shows the route that my group took, starting at the glider stop in Short Strand, walking up here to the Newton Arch Road area, walking through Clune Place, up through here into Madrid Street, and up again to the primary school, which we had been told about and had looked at previously before, and down Bryson Street as well, eventually walking along the Newton Arch Road to our finishing point. This page shows the various collages I made for the areas I felt most intriguing and interested about, and noted something peculiar in my head. Firstly is Clune Place, a predominantly unionist area surrounded by peace walls to protect it from the more nationalist Short Strand. It has had its violence in more recent years, such as 2002. This shows some of the peace walls, which has been decorated in each of their own ways, with shrubbery, community garden, and unionist banners to make it feel more like a community. This also shows a football net, showing that they are adapting to living with the barriers. This shows more unionist murals that the area is able to express themselves with, since they are protected. This shows the Albertridge Road Paulette Avenue area, which has the Bridge Soundscape Park project and Bridge Community Garden, where throughout the garden it is full of speakers that will play different sounds from across the world, such as the Amazon rainforest. This collage shows the area covered by Madrid Street, Beachfield Street, and Bryson Street. This is the area that mainly surrounds the old primary school, and felt it was best to group this area together, since although the walking distance between the areas is quite significant, the actual distance geographically is not. This shows a unionist mural very close to the primary school, and even the primary school itself, the front gates have been utilised to make football nets for local children to play, and evidence of play is here with a bucket of footballs that have been left for them. Even with the peace walls themselves on Madrid Street, Bryson Street, they have been decorated to sort of improve the look, showing how people are trying to adapt instead of tear them down. These murals are from the Newton Arch Road area, and as you can see, a majority of them are majorly sectarian propaganda. So this acts as a barrier in my mind, since they are facing the majorly nationalist Short Strand. Finally was the Strand Close area, which I found very intriguing when visiting it. This was at the end of our journey. I found it unusual that local residents had been hanging out their rubbish bags, as seen here, on the fences, making use of the barrier, and even the fact it was a barrier with you if you were driving down the road you would not notice at all, but these houses are completely hidden from view, to the fact where when you're driving down the road you don't know they're there unless you live there. This collage sums up my main thought from the Short Strand visit, that people are learning to live and adapt with the barriers, using them for their own personal uses or other uses instead of wanting to get rid of them. Having spoken to a resident of Clune Place, she was significantly against the barriers being pulled down, saying it would increase violence and it would endanger people. Some of the more noticeable uses I noticed was, of course, sectarian propaganda, sectarian murals, but also displaying artwork, making community hubs such as in Clune Place, uh, supportive banners for organisations or remembrances such as for Noah Donoghue. And there was also the various personal uses for children or for adults alike. For children, maybe football nets being used on the barriers, or for adults hanging out their bin bags so they don't have to leave it in the house. This sort of thought process began with thinking of George Perec observing the world in a different perspective than you usually would. For the group project, I decided to look at Clune Place as well as doing the collage, feeling that it would be helpful to look at an area significantly instead of Short Strand in general. The reason I chose Clune Place Community Garden was it drew my eye immediately, from the artwork to the fact that it is evident that people have made an effort to live with the barriers and adapt. I decided to do what George Perec had done in one of his chapters, and he had sat at a cafe and noted down everything he could see or hear. I did this process and went to this garden and noted down everything I could see, everything that was significant or insignificant, and decided to catalogue a majority of it. So as you can see, all the different pieces of artwork that were present along the walls, all the toy guns and children's objects that show evidence of play here, that the garden is being used by the local residents. From the garden elements themselves, from the benches to the plants, everything. But it also, when looking at it, notice that it has been somewhat neglected in a sense, from construction equipment being left abandoned, weeds growing everywhere, the plants, although nice looking, overgrown, moss and broken fence panels, residents leaving their possessions abandoned. And although it is nice when first looking at it, it's very aesthetically pleasing, there is evidence of unsightliness and just trying to not make it look nice, but trying to just make it function with throwing aesthetics out the window. Also evident by the rubbish. The area is not well maintained after it was brought in. These pieces sort of demonstrate my thoughts of the Clune Place Community Garden. For example, these pieces are to show what it may look like today if the peace wall wasn't present. This being taken from the view of Clune Place, and this being taken from the view of Mount Pottinger Road. Again, although this would be ideal in the idealistic world, it is not possible. Having said before, I haven't spoken to a resident, they feel would endanger them and put them at risk. These pieces are to demonstrate what immediately drew my eye when I seen the community garden. Of course, the artwork stands out significantly and is what you immediately see with the very vibrant colours in the more dull background. But also, after you look at the art, you see what it is on, that being the barrier, the peace wall. And it sort of puts into perspective, yes, they have made this a nice area, but it is because of this trouble and shattered history past of Belfast and Short Strand specifically that they have had to do this. This brings us into chapter 2, where I take George Perrec's work in a more significant manner when looking at Clune Place. For the independent research, I chose to look at Clune Place. I was already familiar with the area, having done it for the group project, and again, having focused on George Perrec's perspective and point of view, I felt this was the perfect area to investigate. This map shows the location of the University of Belfast campus and Clune Place specifically, with Short Strand surrounding. And this is a close-in view of Clune Place with the identity markers for the area mainly being Mount Pottinger Road and Madrid Street, which I knew beforehand, having looked at a similar area close to Clune Place last year. Throughout this project, George Perrec has been quite significant. His thoughts and way of thinking are second to none, and I felt these quotes, having looked at the community garden, describe my thought process best. You must set about it more slowly, about almost stupidly. Force yourself to write down what is of no interest, what is most obvious, most common, most colourless, and decipher a bit at a time, deduce the obvious facts. Taking this in regard, I decided to decipher a bit of Short Strand, that being the Clune Place Community Garden, and having already noted down everything, the obvious, the most common, the most colourless, and this really spoke to me personally. Before deciding to break down Clune Place into each of its individual layers, I felt it would be best to look at the history of Clune Place and why is this peace wall there in the first place. This map shows Clune Place area over time with the reference maps here, with the first layer being from 1952 to 1969. The second reference map being from 1957 to 1986, and today's most recent map, along with the aerial view from satellite images. To begin with, where Clandeboye Drive would be today, or is today, this was not the case between 1952 and 1967. This was the site of the old bus depot and the Picturedrome Cinema, which were located here. It is also significant to note that although not in Clune Place, this road has now also been blocked off and houses have been built to also make Clandeboye Drive its own cul-de-sac. For Clune Place, between 1957 and sometime between the early 80s, I can estimate, Clune Place Road ran straight onto Mount Pollinger Road. However, this is not the case today. With violence breaking out through the Troubles, this area was blocked off to give Clune Place only one point of entry and exit, being here. And as you can see, this is what it looks like today, having been blocked off in this direction, this being the location of the Clune Place Community Garden, where the wall would be, and this being the only entrance and exit to the area. This can be more clearly seen on this map here with today's view of the area. This film reel sort of depicts the history of the area and the key moments. So from the Picturedrome Cinema and the tram line that ran down Mount Pollinger Road, which the bus depot used to formerly be the tram depot, to the abandoned houses on Clune Place and the violence that was evident in the 2002 Chorlton riots, to the earliest evidence of the community garden being built in 2008, to where the credit union is today, where formerly the cinema stood, in front of the Peace Wall on the Mount Pollinger roadside. For this project, we have individually been tasked with creating a layer drawing, so I felt now was appropriate time to break down Clune Place Community Garden into each of its individual layers, looking at both the Clune Place side of the wall and the Mount Pollinger Road side of the wall. I broke these down into 9 individual layers, that being the Mount Pollinger Road and footpath, the credit union fence, the credit union garden, the physical peace wall itself, the community garden footpath, the artwork, the plants, the lamppost, and the construction materials. The reason I chose these 9 layers is because these, although not all clearly evident, some restrict movement between the local people and residents, such as the credit union fence, the construction materials, and of course the wall itself, whereas others are meant to distract from the peace wall, such as the artwork and the plants. This section shows the actual physical distance that is made up between the Mount Pollinger Road and where Clune Place Road would be, and this being the peace wall. This is drawn at a 1:100 scale to provide viewers with an accurate depth without having to visit the site. This shows the actual area that is covered in this section. This is the first of my 9 layer pages, for each breaking down one of the layers to show what was there and what way I interpreted it. This shows the road and the footpath, which I chose to present in this manner. The credit union fence. The credit union garden. The Clune Place Peace Wall itself. The community garden footpath. The artwork present on the peace wall. The plants around the community garden. The lamppost. And the construction materials. This brings us into our third chapter of my final layer drawing. This page shows my final layer drawing, with each of the layers being seen and put on top of each other to provide that sense of depth and distance. But here we have the construction materials and the lamppost, the plants, as well as the artwork. Also showing the community garden footpath and the significant distance it's creating between Clune Place Road and the wall. And as for the Mount Pottinger side of the wall, we have the credit union garden, the credit union fence, and the footpath and road of Mount Pottinger Road. So that each layer can be seen more clearly, I have included this film reel showing each of the layers in order from furthest distance from Clune Place to closest. And I have included the section once again to show the art in perspective, the area that was covered in this.